We turn now to President Trump's meeting with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. You're looking at senior White House and political correspondent Ed O'Keefe, who has the scoop on this. Ed, good morning. What can you tell us about this visit and those comments made by the president that seem to contradict U.S. intelligence when it comes to MBS's direct link to the killing of Khashoggi?
Sure. The visit continues later this morning when the president and Crown Prince co-headline a U.S.-Saudi investment summit over at the Kennedy Center. But it's those comments the president made defending the Crown Prince yesterday in response to a question regarding what he knew about Jamal Khashoggi's murder back in 2018 that are raising eyebrows. He essentially stepped in when the Crown Prince was asked what he knew and what he would say to those concerned about him being here and getting this lavish welcome. The president berating a reporter from ABC News and suggesting that Khashoggi was a bad guy who had something happen to him. In essence, just dismissing the entire affair as no big deal. But, of course, it was a big deal. And the president also suggested the Crown Prince knew nothing about it. That flies in the face of an assessment by the U.S. intelligence community that was started during the first Trump administration and concluded in 2021 that Khashoggi indeed did know about it because of his iron grip on the kingdom and his preference for rooting out dissidents who were based overseas, as Khashoggi was. Remember, he was murdered at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, and worked for the Washington Post. So we'll see whether the president does anything today to clean that up or stands by his comments yesterday. Part of the reason the president is so willing to stand by the Crown Prince, Errol, of course, he said yesterday he's now vowing to spend up to $1 trillion in the United States. Nobody's ever quite done that before. And the Saudis have said in the past they're going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in the United States and didn't make good on it. So we'll see ultimately whether they do in this case. Among the purchases they're making, F-35 military jets, investments in AI, civil nuclear technology, and other artificial intelligence projects. Big day ahead. A lot of big money set to be discussed there.
Yeah, and we'll have a breakdown on the financial links between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia in just a moment. Ed O'Keefe at the White House. Thank you, Ed. Major Garrett sat down with Jamal Khashoggi's widow on the takeout yesterday to discuss how she felt when she heard the president's comments about her husband's murder.
It was so devastated for me as well, because the Crown Prince himself, he did accountability in 60 Minutes interview in 2019. He said, I'm responsible as a leader, but he did not do anything beyond that. He admitted verbally. He took responsibility verbally, but he did not take any action to show the world there is a rectifying of this crime. I'm talking about the action should be taken, transparent trial for the 18 man who performed the crime. And I did not receive an official apology myself as a wife. They destroyed my life, they taken my lover, and they killed me with my husband. I have 7 years of hell, sir. And they did not even look after me, and they used a spy material in me before I fled from Middle East to U.S.
And that is the widow of Jamal Khashoggi there. Now, the White House says the Saudi Crown Prince committed to an investment of $600 billion in the United States Tuesday, though during an official bilateral meeting, the Crown Prince floated increasing its pledge to almost $1 trillion, as Ed O'Keefe just mentioned. So let's just look now at some of the economic connections between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. Last year, the U.S. and Saudi Arabia traded a total of $40 billion in goods and services. The U.S.'s top exports to the country include things like machinery, turbojet engines, and vehicles. When it comes to direct financial investment, which involves Saudi individuals or businesses investing cash directly into a U.S. business, that figure is about $16.3 billion, according to the Department of Commerce. And it includes funding sectors like transportation, real estate, and automobiles. Saudi Arabia's government has also invested directly into U.S. companies through its sovereign wealth fund. That fund is essentially a giant portfolio of stocks, bond, real estate, and other monetary assets controlled by Saudi Arabia's government that it can invest. Similarly to how you would invest your 401k, it is worth an estimated $925 billion, as you see here, and is controlled by bin Salman. According to the fund, 40% of all of its global investments are directed to the U.S., whether that's through companies or by purchasing goods and services. Some of the U.S. companies that it currently has stakes in include Uber, as you see right next to me, the video game company Electronic Arts, and Take-Two Interactive. In the past, the fund has invested in firms like Netflix, Apple, Visa, and Walmart. Now, despite the Crown Prince and President Trump's remarks Tuesday, the actual total investment could be different from what is projected. Just as an example, in 2017, during Trump's first term, he stated there was a $110 billion defense agreement between the two countries. A CBS News analysis of Defense Security Cooperation Agency records found that the actual total between 2017 and 2020 was closer to $23 billion. Defense analysts concluded that the high evaluation came from Saudi letters of interest and not actual contracts guaranteeing the spending.